What up, naughty steppers? It's Connor Whitmore here again with another classic review for you on the Nawtystep channel. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the debut album from Nero, Welcome Reality. London trio Nero, comprised of producers Daniel Stevens and Joe Ray and vocalist Alana Watson, met as late teens, the former two getting the project up and running on the production side from around 2004, before Watson starts adding her vocals from around 2008. Starting out with a lot of commercially inspired drum and bass music that saw them fit right in alongside other big hitters from the genre, such as Shock 1, Delta Heavy and Netsky, before making a near complete switch to dubstep as the 2010s neared, wanting to deliver their sound in a darker way, even though they were simultaneously going down poppier avenues. Working under Chase and Status's MTA Records label and producing genre-defining tracks such as the dubstep version of Act Like You Know, as well as This Way, Why I Feel This Way, which many see as one of the first real insights into creating dubstep in this cinematic sort of way, practiced by others such as Mount Eden, Imalke and Gemini. Not forgetting a substantial amount of massive remixes to accompany these singles, from Feel So Close by Calvin Harris to Shaolin Style by Bar 9, Hypnotize You by NERD, with, to my knowledge, 4 singles being released prior to the Welcome Reality album being unveiled in full in August 2011. Launched off the back of their world-renowned BBC Radio 1 Essential mix, widely regarded as one of the best of all time, all of which prepared listeners well and gave them a good enough feeling as to what we were going to get from this debut full-length LP. The result being nothing short of spectacular, exceeding expectations in the sheer breadth of incredible tracks it brought to the table, but also in that it was just that, a spectacle. Again, this was a pair of producers bringing the panoramic, widescreen approach to dubstep music, the first true concept album for the genre, and in many ways the only one ever, with Watson's voice being the ideal translator for this wide-reaching approach, accessing one completely varied mood after another in its many guises. Now, to my mind, with Welcome Reality you have 2 different types of track on display here. Those that hone in more on the sinister side of Nero's production, and those that revolve more around emotion, guided by both instrumental and vocal. Essentially, you have those that are more dubstep laden and those that are more pop leaning, but ultimately pretty much every track here is an insightful mix of the two. The most glaring example of this undoubtedly arriving with the extremely in-your-face, out of nowhere track Crush on You, sampling the Jet song of the same title with this unbelievably brash and insistent howitzer that, for large parts, is an 80s pop dance tune, bringing the unlistenable together with the groovy in what is the exuberant song that Welcome Reality needs at that point to push it towards its closing stages, track 10 out of 14. Crush on You stands out to me as the cut verging most on inaccessible for just how loud, abrasive and braggadocious the drops in it are, something which those outside of dubstep admiration came to recognise the genre as, this exclusive thing that only certain people could understand as the likes of Skrillex grew more and more popular. But even then, Crush on You was a track that was delivered through that funky lens because Nero wanted more people to reap the benefits of dubstep production that perhaps had rubbished it before. And with Crush on You being the most outrageously blinding track on show here, for the most part Welcome Reality did an extremely good job of making dubstep more available to your everyday music listener. So futuristic and utopian yet still so alive and present, providing a window into a post-apocalyptic world while still being so relevant to everyday modern life. Captured most in the introductions to tracks like Guilt and Innocence, In the Way and Scorpions, all of which are managed in this very careful, enduring way. Songs that possess a genuine uncertainty to them in projecting towards the future, yet which are still able to make you completely aware of everything you are feeling in that exact moment. The way that Scorpions braces us, yet also encourages us forward, works so well in this ginormous epic intro, the time-stopping break at 1 minute 08 being one of the album's best moments. Particularly brilliant also is the way that Guilt starts at the end of My Eyes, revealing more of itself as it creeps further and further towards the surface. It's this intro and the one to Innocence that for me resemble 2 of the most nostalgia-inducing electronic music sequences of all time. Something about the fragility and the desire of these tracks desperate for peace, stability and clarity, yet alienated amidst the huge powers that be, against whom they have no freedom. And that is exactly what made this album so accessible, the purity of it, hopeful and determined in the face of adversity, which basically everyone has experienced. And it is just full of one pulsating crescendo after another, swelling and surging, engulfing you in its every mighty movement. From the relentless purpose of Scorpions, the frazzling force of Fugue State, the manic, out of control Doomsday, or the stabbing, no prisoners attitude of Innocence, and even the more electrified and vibrant forms of heaviness that we find in tracks like Guilt and Must Be the Feeling. Yet on hand, moreover, to tone the album down at necessary points through lighter forms of dubstep, we have cuts like My Eyes, Me and You, In the Way, Reaching Out, Promises, Departure. Those dictated more so by the musicality or vocal than the previous tracks mentioned. The heaviness is still present, yeah, it takes a slight back seat here. Basically, it has all the peaks and troughs necessary to make a very well-rounded collection of tracks from 1 to 14. Landscape-designed Blade Runner music, at all times neurotic, euphoric, blistering, symphonic, adrenaline junkie seizure music for the dubstep aficionado, synced heartbeats, blood pumping. So many of these tracks also being orchestrally underpinned in the most artful way. It's not all gung-ho in its vibe, there's a lot to it that is harmonious and full of warm feeling. The heavenly musical progression of the final track Departure, the aspiration and resurgence of Promises and Me and You, the nervous anticipation of Guilt and Innocence. And then on the other side you have cuter, daintier tracks like Crush on You and Must Be the Feeling, still packing a punch but certainly more lightweight in their approach, and working well for Welcome Reality overall. Another thing working very well for Welcome Reality being the sampling used in several tracks here, an aspect of the album that I think goes largely unnoticed because, well, why would you know, or how would you know if you hadn't researched it? You have them sampling the Jets in Crush on You, as I mentioned earlier, Out of Touch by Hall & Oates in Reaching Out, Time to Move by Carmen in Must Be the Feeling. Reaching Out being the most interesting one because Nero found out that Daryl Hall, the lead vocalist from Hall & Oates, was working in a studio not too far away from them, so they got in contact. He loves what they're doing with the track, using the Reaching Out for Something to Hold line from the original, and offers to write a completely new verse and re-record that line over again. The result being Reaching Out, a track so expertly assembled as it meanders through your consciousness, dipping in and out of being more happy and defiant, and then more melancholic and reflective. Most of all though for me with this track is how it fades out, the only one that does so until the end, increasing and strengthening its lasting impact. But this is something that is shared to a large extent by many other songs on this album. The word awesome is bandied about a lot, but this album is exactly that. You gawp at the sheer scope of it, you marvel at its picturesque mapping out, a seemingly endless opportunity for discovery. It's incredibly well constructed, the transitions are all seamless, the placement of each track within the album is spot on, it's moody, invigorating, thrilling, empowering. An album, furthermore, that's as much about the texture as it is the inspiration, ideas, motifs and vocals that make this thing so goddamn catchy and infectious from beginning to end. Constantly hinting at pure exaltation and uncontainable release, brimming at the surface but unable to ever fully reach that point. In turn resonating with anyone listening to this album, trying to make their life that little bit better, but not being able to because of forces beyond our power. Which for me is why the title Welcome Reality is such an appropriate one. It's a reminder of the struggles of life as we constantly try to get what we want out of it. The blend of instrumental and vocal here being a musical portrayal of trying to thrive in an ever-changing world, facing the obstacles that come your way, at times combative and others more accepting of defeat. And I get this understanding from the lyrics actually, and if you look into them enough, there is actually a real journey to them. Watson assuming different characters throughout the album, her and the male figure going through periods of control, sorrow, rejection, chasing one another. It's an enthralling story to follow. All the while, of course, bearing significance on her relationship with Dan. They are married and currently embarking on a new side project called The Night. And even though that is happy, the feeling I have whenever I get to the end of Welcome Reality is one of sadness, at least on a lyrical level, because they both seemingly get to a point of giving up on finding each other. But it's also musically that I'm sad once the final track Departure draws to a close. This blissful insight into a utopian future that you are aware is just unreachable in reality. Yet it still leaves the door open for that to happen, allowing us at least to experience it through the music, even though it may not resemble real life as it is now. In doing so, it brings together past, present and future, equally nostalgic and futuristic and everything in between. Engaging musical approaches from decades past whilst providing a snippet of the unknown future, all the while making us reflect on our present situation. But in a more literal sense, talking strictly about the music itself, Welcome Reality is an album that is pretty much flawless. Its drawbacks being minor and arriving only in short moments as opposed to whole songs, because each and every one has its own fantastic bits going for it. To pick just a few special moments here beyond what I've mentioned already, the way that Doomsday announces itself and the album in this huge way, changing tempo completely for the second drop, Nero showing us what they're all about. The contrast between musical vulnerability and full throttle, energetic, grunge-ridden dubstep in Guilt, as conflicting a track as any in terms of how it's meant to make you feel. Not gonna lie guys, every time I listen to this track I feel guilty in not being able to help the protagonist of this song. The way that Me and You comes out of nowhere but fits within the context of the album so well, in this proud, assertive, triumphant way, it exudes so much confidence. The whole second half development in Scorpions, probably my favourite part on the album, cinematic Nero at their absolute peak. The brief first build in Must Be the Feeling, the unnerving way it lurks towards you, very daunting. Those bright pointed notes that run throughout Reaching Out, so full of life and hope, and that ending electric solo, so cleanly articulated. And the ending sequence of the album, the second half of Departure, which rings out a lot of emotion and appreciation, not only for the rest of the album, but for happiness generally. It inspires a lot of gratitude, I think. But all in all here, you had an 80s pop, aesthetic inspired dubstep electro hybrid, told in the most musically virtual reality sort of way. Enigmatic on the surface, yet with so much to reveal to its audience across the 61 minutes, the first dubstep group to truly tackle the widescreen approach with an album. Lest we forget, one of, if not the biggest act responsible for bringing dubstep further into the pop consciousness, that which made it irresistible, bringing it to the masses in this more song-oriented manner, taking their sound out of the underground to give everyone of all music appreciation a chance to enjoy it. I mean, it didn't debut at #1 in the UK album charts for nothing, I'll tell you that much. Nero taking all the influence they could from Daft Punk and Justice and Depeche Mode to create this massive, mind-frying sound that was still so attainable on an emotional level. Refined, continuous, seamless, with everything you would want from an album of this type and more. This thing is a story, a continuous voyage, with everything blending into each other. A whirlwind of a ride, a roller coaster, every song being a banger in its own way, bringing something new to the table each time, dovetailing between different moods and tones at an alarming rate. Dubstep opening itself up to the rave generation, expanding its wings to be told in more adrenaline-fueled, fist-pumping, exhilarating ways, as opposed to just straight-up head-banging, mosh-pitting and filth. Transporting you to newer worlds in hope of finding more meaningful, deeper experiences and emotions. Music for an imaginary film, the dubstep sci-fi blockbuster everyone needed to envisage the genre as something previously beyond the imagination. I've waxed lyrical here, but it really is an impressive body of work and an important direction for dubstep to go in at that time, when the introduction of BROSTEP really risked the genre becoming out of hand in terms of the wildness of production. Because Nero reined in the genre with Welcome Reality, showing lovers of all music not just dubstep fans, how dark electronic music could be as accessible as anything else, constituting not so much as an album on a sonic level, but more as an opus, a life story compressed into little over an hour, gripping you throughout in its many disguises. They had their thing and ran with it, perfecting that pulsating, vibrating style of dubstep that permeates this album, giving it that vintage reverberation and echoing, dizzying effect to establish such a compelling theme. Again, putting you in that limbo state between past, present and future, never knowing quite which one you're in, as these songs immerse you in their timeless nature. But working into the future from that August 2011 release, the September 2015 follow-up, Between Two Worlds, was little on the iconic Welcome Reality, but in a way that's made me appreciate Welcome Reality much more. It made me realise just how much work must have gone into making Welcome Reality as outstanding as it is. Producer Dan has talked of how he didn't expect Welcome Reality to get the reception it did at all, putting that unwanted pressure on them before production on that sophomore album had even started. But they seem to be in a good place now as they take a brief break from Nero, Dan and Alana getting on with The Night of course, and Joe with his own solo project, which I think works really well for them. Not just Nero, but for Welcome Reality, a legendary album that now can be given much more space to be appreciated as a result. An album which I've tried to do verbal justice here, but to be honest, it is one of those that almost transcends explanation, putting forward ideas that are almost too difficult to put into words. It's beautiful and will be responsible for me longing after my youth as I age. Its ability to transport us into past times in our lives is near unparalleled in the EDM scene. Didn't necessarily place them up there with the greats, as it's only one album, but it's certainly up there with the best of the modern electronic music era. And so that is that for the latest classic review on the Nawtystep channel, this time of Nero's debut album, Welcome Reality. Thank you very much, and as always, for tuning in. Let me know if you love this album, if you think it's a classic as well, which tracks you love from it, if you resonated with anything I said in this video. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this classic review, give it a big old thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit the notification bell along the way. Next to my head there should be a link to the other classic review from the channel on Skrillex's Bangarang, as well as a few other examples of the other kinds of stuff we do on the Nawtystep channel. If you haven't liked and followed on social media, get on it, it's all in the description box down below. And lastly, if it's naughty, then you know guys, so be sure and remember as always to keep it naughty and stay safe. And I shall see all of you legends in the next one. Peace out.